Hey guys, what's going on? Hermdo back with you. And I found this article on the New York Times I wanted to share. America is pushing its workers into homelessness. I thought this was pretty good, kind of illuminating. Kind of goes along with that video I made maybe about 2, 3 weeks ago, talking about how a lot of Americans are being pushed into poverty by like the American kind of capitalist system. But this was something talking like specifically about people's jobs and how expensive things are getting. And I feel like a lot of these points have been touched on before. I've covered them definitely, but this is kind of a newer perspective on it. But let's get into this a little bit. At 10 p.m., a hospital technician pulls into a Walmart parking lot. Her 4 kids, one still nursing, are packed into the back of her Toyota. She tells them it's an adventure, but she's terrified someone will call the police. Inadequate housing is enough to lose your children. She stays awake for hours, lavender scrubs folded in the trunk, listening for footsteps, any sign of trouble. Her shift starts soon. She'll walk into the hospital exhausted, pretending everything is fine. Across the country, men and women sleep in their vehicles night after night and then head to work the next morning. Others scrape together enough for a week in a motel, knowing one missed paycheck could leave them on the street. These people are not on the fringes of society. They are the workers America depends on. The very phrase working homeless could be contradiction and possibility in a nation that claims hard work leads to stability, and yet their homelessness is not only pervasive but also persistently overlooked, excluded from official counts, ignored by policymakers, treated as another anomaly rather than a disaster unfolding in plain sight. Yes. That video I made about Politico admitting the economy was actually shit. You got to consider like the actual amount of people either out of work, who stop looking for work, or who are the working homeless. It's like 23% in this country. People like this, people who have jobs but don't have homes, are a large amount of people in this country. I know the homeless population is going up overall. I know a lot of these people exist out there, even though we pretend they're not real. But I saw this other documentary a few months ago, and it was back in 2018, so a couple years before the pandemic hit. But there were people who had jobs who were living out of hotels. Some were living out of like tents in a parking lot outside a church. Some were living out of their cars. All these situations have just gotten so much worse over the last few years. And that was before the pandemic. That was a serious problem. There's this guy who had 6 kids. I can't remember what his name was. He was like some computer programmer. He lost his job. The only thing he could get was like a $9 an hour job, like cleaning tables at a restaurant or something. He couldn't afford a home anymore. He had 6 kids to take care of. The state took away one of his kids. It was fucked, man. But this stuff is going a lot more common in America these days. Oh, today, oops, my mouse is fucked up. Just scroll down. Today, the threat of homelessness is the most acute, not in the poorest regions of the country, but in the richest, fastest growing ones. In places like these, a low-wage job is homelessness waiting to happen for an increasing share of the nation's workforce. A mix of soaring rents, low wages, and inadequate tenant protections have forced them into a brutal cycle of insecurity in which housing is unaffordable, unstable, or entirely out of reach. A recent study analyzed in the 2010 census found that nearly half of people experiencing homelessness while staying in shelters, and about 40% of those living outdoors or other makeshift conditions had formal employment. But that's only part of the picture. These numbers don't capture the full scale of working homelessness in America, that many who lack a home but never enter a shelter or who wind up on the streets. I spent the past 6 years reporting on men and women who work in grocery stores, nursing homes, daycare centers, and restaurants. You know, that's one thing I'd like to do. I'd like to get the opinion of people who are working these jobs like this low wage work, like retail workers or fast food workers or like waitresses, kind of service industry people. How are you making it? When I worked at Kroger making $10 an hour and everybody on that shift made like 10, $11 an hour, I would talk to them and just kind of like, where are you staying? What are you doing? And they'd be like, I just have to live with a bunch of other people. I'm living with like 4 other people, or they're cohabitating. And some of the young people, some of the guys in their 20s, they're still living at home. Some people, they had like multiple jobs. I had multiple jobs at the time. I was working full-time at one place, working on the weekends at Kroger, and I barely had enough to cover rent. It was fucked, man, but it's a situation. I did that for a few months and I burnt out, but a lot of people have no choice. They do that shit for years, man. They do that shit for years. They prepare food, stock shelves, deliver packages, and care for the sick and elderly. At the end of the day, they return not to homes, but to parking lots, shelters, and crowded apartments of friends or relatives, and squalid extended stay hotel rooms. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Scroll down. Jesus Christ. America's been experiencing what economists described as a historically tight labor market with a national unemployment rate of just 4%. All the while, homelessness has soared to the highest level on record. So is low unemployment when workers are a paycheck away from homelessness? What good is low unemployment? Few statistics succinctly capture why the catastrophe is unfolding. Today, there isn't a single city, state, or county in the United States where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a medium-priced two-bedroom apartment. An astounding 12.1 million low-income renter households are severely cost-burdened, spending at least half of their earnings on rent and utilities. Since 1985, rent prices have succeeded income gains by 325%. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. I didn't realize it was that bad. Holy shit. It's believable. It's fucking believable. Think about, like, around here, around me, rents are like $1,200, $1,300. And I'm sure that's like, I think the median or the average rent price in this country is like $2,000 a month. And like the old way of thinking, like the way my dad would say, it's like, well, you want to be bringing in, like, you want rent to only be a quarter of your income, but now it's like 30%. But now it's even more. Like 30% of $1,200, that's $3,600 to like maybe $3,700, depending on taxes and whatnot. But you know, I make $2,500 a month, about $2,500, and rent would be half my fucking paycheck. And good luck paying the rest of that shit. I got credit cards to pay. I got my health insurance. I got my car insurance. I got my medications. I got, you know, groceries, other shit. You know, it's insane, you know, the way it is. I can't, you know, I'm cohabitating right now. I can't afford to live on my own with my wages. You know, it's fucked. According to the National Low Housing Income Coalition, the average housing wage required to afford a modest two-bedroom rental home across this country is $32.11. Only 52 million American workers earn less than $15 an hour. And if you're disabled and receive SSI, it's even worse. Those payments are currently capped at $967 a month nationwide. And there's hardly anywhere in the country where one form of mixed income is enough to afford the average rent. Something's very rotten in America. And I'm glad New York Times is talking about this. I'm glad this is finally being brought to light. Maybe they wouldn't have written this article under Biden, but you know what? It doesn't matter. The politics don't matter. The fact of the matter, things have been fucked. Things have been fucked for a long time. And the more these magazines talk about this shit, this is more important to me than politics, than left versus right. This is, holy shit, like 20% of the country is like on the verge of being homeless. Even more than that. I don't know. Wasn't it like 40% of people live in paycheck to paycheck? Or let me look that up. How many Americans live paycheck to paycheck? Lending Club, 62% of respondents said they needed their next paycheck to cover monthly spending. Nerd Wallet, 57% of respondents said they were living paycheck to paycheck. CNBC and SurveyMonkey, 65% of respondents said they live paycheck to paycheck. Okay, but these surveys, around 30% of American households are living paycheck to paycheck. Bank of America defines paycheck to paycheck as households spend at least 90% of their income on necessities. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Okay, here's one from CNBC. Get into this a little bit. Scroll down, please. Achieving nearly any financial goal, savings hard from saving to retirement to, for fuck's sake, to buying a car comes down. God, even these fuckers want money. I don't have money. Fuck you. Inflation versus wage growth. Here we see. Oh, baby. Wage projection. Wages are projected to outpace the price increases by 2025. Huh, interesting. Nearly half of Americans, or at least someone agreed with the statement, I am living paycheck to paycheck, at least as of the third quarter of 2024. The share shrank slightly between the second and third quarters of this year, but in 2022, less than 40% of Americans felt this way, Bank of America reports. So, I don't know, can you trust Bank of America? But, oops, what to do? Anyways, that's bad. But it's not just wages are low, it's that work has become more precarious than ever. It's even for those earning above the minimum wage, job security is eroded in ways that make stable housing increases out of reach. That's the thing. I'm planning on moving back to the east side of my state soon. But I'm thinking, would it be wise to quit my job right now? What if I can't find anything? I want to have a job before I move. I don't want to be fucking around. I don't want to be like unemployed for a long length of time. I just can't afford to do that shit. I can't put that burden on people I live with. But like, am I forced to like live here because I have a job? I mean, that's the thing you got to consider. If you want to move, if you want, that's things people have to consider. If you're in a situation where your job is absolutely toxic and shitty and like it's detrimental to your mental health, you have to keep it. That's what people don't really consider. Or if you want to move somewhere to be closer to family and you can't find a job down there, that's fucked. It's fucked. There's so many, and pisses me off to hear about this kind of shit, but this is the reality for a lot of Americans. Some people, you just can't quit your job right now. You just can't. More and more workers now face volatile schedules, unreliable hours, and lack of benefits such as sick leave. The rise of just-in-time scheduling means employees don't know how many hours they'll get week to week, making it impossible for a budget to rent. Entire industries have been gigified, leaving rideshare drivers, warehouse workers, and temp nurses working without benefits, protections, or reliable pay. Even full-time jobs in retail and healthcare, one seen as dependable, are increasingly contracted out, turned into part-time roles, or made contingent on meeting ever-shifting quotas. For millions of Americans, the greatest threat isn't that they'll lose their jobs, that the job will never pay enough, never provide enough hours, never offer enough stability to keep them housed. It's not just New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, it's also in tech hubs like Austin and Seattle, cultural and financial centers like Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and rapidly expanding cities like Nashville, Phoenix, and Denver, places awash with investment, luxury, development, and corporate growth. I tell you, I had a DSA guy come. I was living southeast of Michigan. I don't want to say what city specifically. It was a suburb of Detroit. But I had this DSA guy, Democrat Socialist America, come in and talk about how he came up to my apartment, knocked on my door, and gave me this brochure. He was talking about basically how City Hall was like rubber stamping these developers to come in and build all these hideous luxury apartments. And it's like where there was like an empty space, like a parking lot or a small park, they were putting up these high-rise apartments that cost like $2,000, $3,000 a month to live in. And it's like a blight on the neighborhood. It's fucking bad, man. It's fucking bad. But this wealth isn't trickling down. You mean to tell me that Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, lied to us and it was pulled at the top? While affordable units are demolished, new ones are blocked, tenants are evicted all about every minute. 7 evictions are filed all around the United States, according to Princeton's Eviction Lab, and housing is treated as a commodity to be accorded and exploited for maximum profit. Jeez. Jesus. This results in a devastating pattern of cities gentrifying and become revitalized. Nurses, teachers, and janitors and childcare providers to keep them running are being systematically priced out unless the earlier periods of widespread immiseration, such as the recession of 2008, where witness today is a crisis born less of poverty than of prosperity. The workers aren't falling into homelessness. They're being pushed. They're casualties. They're the casualties now of a failing economy, one that's thriving, just not for them. Yeah. Who does the economy work for? Everyone was talking about how awesome the economy was. Who does the economy work for? Where's all that wealth concentrating, man? You got to ask these fucking questions. And none of these fucking people wanted to be honest for the longest fucking time. And yet, even as this calamity deepens, many families remain invisible, existing in a kind of shadow realm, deprived of a home and neither counted nor recognized by the federal government as homeless. This exclusion was by design. In the 1980s, as mass homelessness surged across the United States, the Reagan administration made a concerted effort to shape public perception of the crisis. Officials downplayed its severity while muddying its root causes. Federal funding for research on homelessness was steered almost exclusively towards studies that emphasized mental illness and addiction, diverting attention away from structural forces. Gutted funding for low-income housing, shredded safety nets, framing homelessness as a result of personal failings didn't just make it easier to dismiss, it's also less politically threatening. It obscured the socioeconomic roots of the crisis and shifted blame onto the victims, and it worked. By the late 1980s, at least one survey showed that many Americans attributed homelessness to drugs or unwillingness to work. Nobody mentioned housing. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the fucking thing. We have such a skewed perception of what causes poverty in this country. People just assume all these old ideas from certain people. Just a lot of wealthy young people too. A lot of people who are successful, and they talk about this kind of shit. A lot of these finance people, and a lot of like regular like normies who would make good money. They just assume that if you're not, pulling in 6 figures, it's like a moral failing on your part. It's like you're fucked, and you don't realize it. It's just, you're fucked and it's your own fault. That's the thing, and you just don't realize, hey, shit is getting more expensive, and these jobs, I mean, I make about $19 an hour now. 10 years ago, that could have got me a decent apartment. It did. I was making $20 an hour about a decade ago. And I was able to afford a decent apartment in a decent part of town and still have plenty of money left over. Now, that apartment costs twice as much. And I'm still making the same. I'm making $1 an hour less than I was a fucking decade ago. I know. That means I'm a fucking loser, I guess. The gap between what we see and what's really happening is vast. Recent research suggests the true number of people experiencing homelessness, factoring those living in cars and motel rooms, has doubled, up with others at least 6 times as high as official counts. As bad as reported numbers are, the reality is far worse. It tends to just tip the iceberg, the most glaring sign of a far more entrenched crisis. The willful blindness that has caused incalculable harm, locking millions of families and individuals out of vital assistance, but it's done more than that. How we count and define homelessness dictates how we respond to it, but a distorted view of the problem has led to responses that are inadequate at best and cruelly counterproductive at worst. What are they talking about here? Swept away. What's all this? We in a tent near Hollywood, January. Los Angeles sanitation workers showed up late one morning. Harris said he left to warn others nearby the city was cleaning the area. He came back to find his tent and contents gone. He lost everything he needed for his job with DoorDash, his electric bike ID, and iPhone. Losing his phone meant he had to regain access to his DoorDash account without his passport and security card, which were also taken. That process proved difficult. Like, God forbid, like you need to plug like a space heater in at like a rest stop. Like some cop would have a problem with that just so you can live. I mean, Jesus, like just the accommodations these people have. It's just, man, maybe I am turning into a socialist. Maybe I wasn't being funny. Fucking A. They asked you to take a picture of the front and back of your ID, then take a selfie to verify it's you, but I couldn't do that. Harris said it was a disaster. He said he couldn't do his delivery job for a month and had to ride a non-electric bike, limited the area he could deliver to and the amount he earned. Los Angeles officials did not comment on Harris's case in the statement that the city works not unnecessarily remove anyone's belongings, that attended items were stored or thrown away. Jesus Christ. Not easy getting services. It's trying to find work and trying to save. Harris, 1,000 people living in the streets of the United States who's been subject to sweeps, the term most often described how cities dismantle homeless encampments to clear areas where people are living outside. What are you going to do? You got to build more fucking housing, man. What are we going to do about this shit? But the truth is that all of this, the nights spent sleeping in cars, the constant uprooting from motels and friends' couches, the incessant hustle to stay one step away from homelessness is neither inevitable nor intractable. Ours was meant to be a society where people clocking 50 or 60 hours a week aren't paid enough to meet their most basic needs. It doesn't have to be a place where parents sell their plasma or live without electricity just to keep a roof over their children's heads. For decades, lawmakers have stood by while rents soared, while housing was turned into an asset class for the wealthy, worker protections were shredded, and wages failed to keep up. We settled for piecemeal rather than nothing but initiatives. Better than nothing initiatives that tweak the existing system rather than transform it. But the disaster we face demands more than half measures. It's not to pull people out of homelessness. We must stop them from being pushed them in the first place. Some cities, for every one person who secures housing, they're estimated 4 become homeless. How do we halt this relentless churn? There are immediate steps, stronger tenant protections like rent control and just cause eviction laws. The elimination of exclusionary zoning and higher wages with robust labor protections, but we also need transformative, comprehensive solutions like large-scale investments in social housing that treat affordable, reliable shelter as an essential public good, not a privilege for the few. Boy, any Republican reading that would have a fucking field day. Jesus Christ. Any meaningful solution will require a fundamental shift in how we think about housing in America. Safe, affordable homes shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a guaranteed right for everybody. Increasing the ideal will demand an expansion for moral imagination. Acting on it will require unwavering political resolve. We should be asking ourselves not just how much worse they can become, but why we tolerate it for so long. Because when work no longer provides stability, when wages are too low and rents are too high, when millions of people are one medical bill, one missed paycheck, one rent hide away from losing their homes, who exactly is safe? Who gets to feel secure in this country, and who are the casualties of our prosperity? So yeah, that's fucked up. That's fucked up. Jesus Christ. But here we go. Amazon Piss Jugs posted this, and some people are reacting to it. Rent prices have exceeded income gains by 30 to 25% the entire time we've been alive. What a scam. Especially why I don't take anything or anyone seriously. The system is designed to oppress us, only works when we are so downtrodden and afraid we cannot fight back. It's because there's no unions when labor can't negotiate for higher wages than materials. That is bargaining power, supplier takes or increases for themselves. Americans rejected unions that allowed them to bargain collectively. But materials are typically oligopolies. Yeah. Price index by commodity lumber and wood. Ooh, that's going way up. What do we got here? Price index by commodity metals and steel products, cold rolled steel, sheet, and strip. Ooh, baby. We got here gypsum product manufacturing, gypsum building materials. Yeah, I see a lot of videos of guys building houses uh, in the sun belt, and they got a lot of shitty building materials down there. A lot of like really like fucked up wood, like and housing standards. It's bad. It's like we need to build more housing, but a lot of the materials we use are just so absurdly expensive. It's just everything's going to cost so much more goddamn money, and you got to watch out because a lot of these contractors, these people that who are you going to give the jobs to? Who's going to be building these houses? That's the question. Because if we're going to kick out all the migrant workers, that's going to be fucking difficult. And who's providing the materials? Are they providing good, safe materials? It's a big fucking mess. It's a big fucking mess. But let's go into what Twitter had to say about this. And NYT is complicit. Agreed. All right. Well, look, I'm not saying we should cut NYT any slack, but this was a very illuminating article, and generally, I really have no issues with anything said in there. Well, I have issues with it because it should be fucking put to a stop. In the richest, most powerful country on earth, so many people are fucking struggling. I've talked to two friends in the past week and they were unexpected let go as part of mass layoffs at separate companies. These are both late 30s, breadwinners for their families, mortgages, kids at school. Today I saw that two seemingly popular restaurants in my downtown are closing up due to rent hikes. We are over this cliff, guys. The ground is getting closer. Brace yourselves. Oh, sorry to hear about your friends. Hope they recover. Thanks, but it ain't looking promising. I'm picturing a future where a lot of people end up cohabitating with friends and family long term, return to trade school in middle age, and start a second career. Yeah. The wealthy are so busy amassing capital they forgot how to keep pitchforks at bay. You can't feed your family. Safety is so uncertain no matter what you do. Violence becomes more attractive. And these straw men like Putin, sorry, accelerationists. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. This is fucked. Oh. But yeah, it's an absolute fucking mess. I don't know what to make of this. Are you working poor? How are things going for you? I want to ask my audience, how are things going for you? Me, I'm cohabitating long term. I got really no other options right now unless I can secure a higher paying job. But bro, no one's really hiring right now. I got to put myself out there more. I understand that. I got to brush up the old resume. But man, it's just been tough. And right now, I'm kind of secure in my job. I've been there for 3 years, but anything could fucking happen. We're tied. I build components for automobiles, for cars, and I'm worried about the car market. I'm worried about the prices of the materials. I'm worried about, layoffs and shit like that. I don't know if that's ever going to happen to me. I mean, they did reduce my schedule here and there every once in a while, but it happens. It comes and goes. It comes in waves. Some days I got laid off over Christmas for a temporary layoff for 2 weeks. I only got paid for 2 days out of like 16 days. It was a fucking mess, but that kind of shit just happens. But I'm going to leave it there. I wish I had better news for you guys, but I don't know, man. I'm reading more stuff about the recession or about the economy. More people kind of fear-mongering about the recession. People thought it was going to happen under Biden. Now that Trump's in the Oval Office again, hey, these fears seem to be spiking back up again. You could blame the liberal media, but I don't know, man. It looks rough right now. Something is definitely wrong with this country. But yeah, leave a comment down below. Let me know how you're doing. How are you coexisting? Are you a low-income earner? How are you surviving? That's what I want to know. Are you cohabitating? Are you living out of your car? No judgments, none of that shit. You can talk about that shit. Whatever. If you're a YouTuber, you want to make a response video to me, hey, sure, go ahead and tag me on there. Maybe I'll give you my Twitter account. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys for right now. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Stay strong out there, everybody. Things got to get worse before they can get better. Hopefully they get better at some point. But yeah, stay strong, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Little.